Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, December the 24th. Merry Christmas Eve to everyone. It is Sunday, December the 24th, 2023. It is currently 3:21 p.m. Central Time, and I am coming to you live from the Theology Central studio, located right here in Abilene, Texas. And as you can tell, we're still not this polished professional broadcast, are we? No, we had problems right there at the beginning because I didn't have everything set up correctly. So there was like about a 15-20 second delay to starting our intro music, meaning after this broadcast is over, I have to go and delete that 15 seconds of silence, or people will hit play and go, wait a minute, there's nothing there, and then think there's nothing in that episode. So we will have to fix that. But that just shows you that even now, this is a very, put it this way, this is not a very produced podcast. It's a very real podcast with someone sitting in front of a microphone talking about things from a theological perspective. And no matter what happens, I always want it to be that way to to a great degree, I think not just a great degree. I think I want it to always be that way. Exactly. Right. There are millions of podcasts. They're very polished. They're very put together. They may have producers, and they have this, and they have a co-host, and there's just like a template. This is what you're supposed to do to have a successful podcast. These are the rules you're supposed to follow. And I've taken those rules, thrown them in the trash, and I want to go back to more of a very, let's say I'm not going to follow the template. I'm going to do it in a different way. Very raw, very not produced, not all edited, not just a real person sitting in front of a real microphone talking about things going on in the world of Christianity, but talking about it all from a theological perspective. I'm going to try to maintain that no matter what happens. But if I'm being honest with you, there's a little part of me right now that's thinking, maybe I need to change things up a little bit. Maybe I need to go delete some episodes, and maybe I need to do better in editing, and maybe I need to change this. But then there's the other part of me going, no, you're not going to do that. And the reason I'm having these conflicting thoughts on this Sunday, December the 24th, the fact that I'm even here in front of the microphone, because I was downstairs watching the Detroit Lions. That's what I was watching, right? I mean, they have a chance to it's been 30 years. They're about to make a little bit of history. Well, they're losing when I left. Now I'm way behind because I'm watching Red Zone on delay. So no one email me and tell me what's going on. Okay. So I'm going to have to go downstairs and rewind a little bit, but I'm going to watch that game. But I was watching that, and then I get an email. All right? And I get emails all the time, all right? I get an email, and then, in fact, I've just gotten a few emails in the last few seconds, all right? So I get an email, and it's a response, right? It's a reply, I should say, to the program that I did about Catholic priests and same-sex marriages and Pope Francis and all the things we talked about. So I see that it's a reply, and I'm like, oh, no. Who did I make mad? Did I say something incorrect? What did I do? What do I do? Because, I get a lot of negative ones. But I notice it says, you are now on Sirius XM. I'm like, Sirius XM, that's Sirius XM satellite radio. I'm like, what are they talking about? So I clicked on it, and here is the email. This was sent to me at 2:46 p.m. Central Time, December the 24th. It says, you are now on Sirius XM. If you didn't know, look forward to listening to you on there. And I'm like, wait. Oh, wait. I'm on Sirius XM. How did this happen? So I opened up the Sirius XM app. I did a search for theology. And before I could even type in the word central, there I was. There was the podcast. I'm like, wait a minute. Now I'm on the Sirius XM app. I don't know how many people subscribe to Sirius XM, but there are a lot, millions of people, millions and millions, okay, multiple millions subscribe to satellite radio, and they have access then to the Sirius XM app. And Sirius XM just did a major overhaul of their app to improve it, to make it more look like a streaming service. So I'm like, wait, what is going on? What is going on? So I want to announce today that if you have Sirius XM, well, if you download the Sirius XM app, right, you'll notice it's completely redone. You may have positives about it or negatives about it, but it's all there. And guess what you can now listen to? You can now subscribe to the Theology Central podcast on the Sirius XM app. I had no idea this was going to happen. I kept thinking that it was a possibility, and I will explain. But here in a minute, I got to look at someone else, or that same person just sent me an email. It says, well, Merry Christmas then. Please keep the podcast going. It's helpful and good to listen to. Well, hey, that's very nice that someone just said, keep the podcast going. Thank you so very much for saying that. Very much appreciated, and Merry Christmas to you as well. So here's what's going on. Here's what I think is happening. If I don't know how much you've been paying attention to the world of podcasting. I don't know, if you've ever been paying close attention to it, but way back in the olden days, I think it was around 2008, there was a podcasting app or let's just say there was a company that was going to get podcasts to people, and that company was called Stitcher. In fact, Stitcher was one of the oldest podcast platforms, one of the oldest. Well, that podcast platform, that podcast app, Stitcher, which I used, and I loved the Stitcher podcasting app. I loved listening to things on the Stitcher podcasting app. Their notification system was fast. It was good. There was everything I loved about the Stitcher podcasting platform. And of course, our podcast was on the Stitcher podcasting app. And it was one of the oldest podcasting apps. Again, I think the company started in like 2008. All right. So that's going way back. Well, Stitcher was bought out by Sirius XM, and in August of 2023, I think it was August the 29th, maybe in the 28th, they shut down the Stitcher app. Gone. And so then people who were using the Stitcher app was like, okay, now which app am I going to go listen to podcasts on? And we did a couple of podcast episodes about that. Well, I kept thinking, well, if Sirius bought them and then they just closed the app down, there has to be a plan. There has to be a strategy. Well, then I started hearing, well, they're going to redo the Sirius XM app. And I'm like, oh, maybe, just maybe, then they will take all the podcasts that were on the Stitcher app and move them over to the Sirius XM app. I'm like, I wonder. That would be crazy if one day I could be heard on the Sirius XM app. That would be crazy. Now, I kind of said it in a much more like maybe, possible, fantasy. Well, as of today, December the 24th, 2023, Theology Central is now available on the Sirius XM app. And you will notice something. Now, some of you pay close attention to things. Some of you don't. If you go to any podcasting app and you do a search for Theology Central, you'll typically see two podcasts. Right? One has our traditional logo, the green background. You'll note the artwork. It says Theology Central, and it looks normal. Then you'll see a podcast that says Theology Central, and it'll have our artwork, but at the bottom, you'll see that it's branded with the Sermon Audio brand. That because we have two podcasts, it's the same podcast, but it's two different podcasting feeds. One comes from our podcast hosting site, Spreaker, and one comes from Sermon Audio, which can serve as a podcast hosting site. So we have them both going because some people will only want to listen to something that comes from Sermon Audio because they know the people on Sermon Audio had to sign a statement of faith to be able to be broadcast on their platform. So some people, they look for that Sermon Audio kind of logo, that branding. So we would like to have both of them available. Well, currently on Sirius XM, it's not pulling from the Sermon Audio feed. It's not. I don't know why. Don't know. I would like to have them both there, but that's okay. But it is now available. And I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know how that's going to translate into listeners. I don't know if our numbers will go up. I don't know if our numbers will go down. You never know how I just know this. It's now available to even more people. I mean, I guess in some ways, let me take that back. Well, no. Okay. Yeah. Let me say it this way. Because the world of podcasting is strange. Let me explain. First, there's a lot of people who are just not into podcasts. They don't care to listen to podcasts. They're just not. They don't care. They don't like them. Fine. Some may not be into them, And because they're not into them, they're obviously not going to go download a podcasting app. They're not going to go download, Pocket Cast, Breaker, iCatcher, all the different ones. The Apple podcasting app, Google Podcast is going away. That app is going away as well. But whichever app, they're not going to. But if they have, say, Spotify, or if they have Pandora, well, they're like, okay, I'm not going to go download a podcasting app, but since podcasts are available on Pandora or Spotify, well, then I may check one out, or I may look, or they may get a recommendation, and then they may check it out. Or Amazon Music, same way. People may not be into podcasts, but if they have Amazon Music for music, they see the podcast tab and they may do some exploring. So that's why you want your content on Spotify, Pandora, and you want it on Amazon Music. Well, it's the same way. A lot of people may be into kind of the Sirius XM world, right? They may have it in their car. They also have the app. They may not necessarily be into podcast, but now that it's available on that very app, they may be searching for something and see Theology Central, and then there we are. So it could, in a sense, it's available to more people in this way. Because some people, it's available technically to everyone on the planet who has access to the internet. They can find it and listen to it. But people are they have their, like, this is the app I'm going to use, and I don't want another app. I'm not going to go look anywhere else. I don't want 5 apps. Or see, I have like every podcasting app available on earth. Other people don't like that. They want one app and that's it. Well, if they're not into podcasts, but they're into Sirius XM for their talk shows, their news programming, their music, whatever they are using Sirius XM for, well, now they can simply type in theology, and there we are. I am going to try to get the sermon audio feed there. I don't know how. At this point, I didn't even know. It's not like Sirius XM contacted me, right? They didn't let me know. But once your podcast is out there, anything that's pulling from an RSS feed on podcast, kind of once you end up on I'll just use this terminology, the global directory, then any app that pulls in from that directory of podcasts, they can do so. I'm assuming they're going to have a way that you can manually submit your feed. Like Apple does that, Spotify does that, all of them, where you can say, hey, no, I want my podcast on your platform, and you submit your feed. Pandora's system is it takes like 6 months for them to ever get your podcast on there, which is very frustrating. So hopefully, and considering SiriusXM owns Pandora, I hope that's not a sign of things to come. But we will see. I did not even know this was happening. They did not notify me. To the listener who let me know, thank you. I'm excited. The reason I'm doing this broadcast is just to let you know that if you have a SiriusXM subscription, download the app, and you can listen to Theology Central there. But I'm doing this broadcast because I want to test it. Here's what I want to test. If you have the SiriusXM app, find me really quick. Click on the little bell for notifications. Close the app. And when this broadcast is over, start timing how long it takes to get a notification that there is now another episode available. I'm hoping it's almost instantaneous. I'm hoping. Stitcher used to be so fast. Stitcher, this is the way it used to work. I would say I could finish a broadcast, or I could finish a sermon at the church, and I would finish it up, stop the broadcast, and maybe even before I could even get halfway down the middle aisle of the sanctuary, boom, Stitcher notification, new podcast available from Theology Central. And I'd be like, wow, that is crazy. So I'm hoping they got the same notification. But I'm thinking it's going to be massively delayed. But we will see. But yeah, I wanted to let people know. Theology Central is now available on the Sirius XM app. The Stitcher podcasting app's long gone. So, I mean, obviously you have to know that by now. The Google podcasting app, I think if it's not gone, it's going to be gone soon. And they're going to move everything to YouTube Music. See, Google Podcasts is going to go to YouTube Music. Stitcher went to Sirius XM. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to have these apps that are they're multi-purposed, right? Music, podcast, music, podcast. Now, I like the way Apple's approach. They have the Apple podcasting app and the Apple Music app, and the two worlds do not collide. Because I think when you have podcasts mixed into your music, it's a mess. It's a convoluted mess. And I think it makes it hard for people to discover new podcasts. That's why you want a dedicated podcast app, because then you can discover new ones. I really thought if we go further back, the Edify Christian Podcast app, I really had high hopes for that, right? I really thought that they could do something with it, but they didn't really do much. It's just, I don't ever see any advertisements for it. I don't see any promotion of it. Nothing. And our numbers from the Edify podcasting app are dismal. They are horrifying. They don't even show up in the top 50. Like, well, go figure. And to me, I always have to laugh. On the Christian podcasting app, I'm like at the bottom of the barrel. On other podcasting apps, we actually enter charts, right? I mean, we're in the top 5% or top 10% of, no, top 5 now, top 10. I don't even remember what we are now. Hang on, let me look. Globally, hang on, let me look. I don't want to give wrong information. One second here. I'm just going to type this in. Here we go. There we are. We're in the top 5%. This is how we are ranked. This podcast, speaking of Theology Central, compared to other RSS-based public podcasts, and in a world on a scale from 0 to 100, the higher the more popular. So they talk about it. And then this is what they say. This podcast, speaking of Theology Central, is one of the top 5% most popular shows out of 3,251,587 podcasts globally, ranked by Listen Score, the estimated popularity score. That's crazy. Now, that's a number. The one thing I do know, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like it means something because it just shows you that you're an RSS-based podcast, and based all the numbers gathered from all the different ways of measuring it, I'm in the top 5%. But that doesn't actually translate to much. It sounds more significant than it is. Like on one hand, you want to go, whoa, that's awesome. On the other hand, you kind of go, man, 90% of those people you never hear from. If you disappear tomorrow, they wouldn't even care. They don't respond. They don't participate. They don't email. They don't do anything. Okay. So, they're kind of like this invisible thing, and you know they're there, but you don't really know what that actually means. So, us being on the Sirius XM app, I don't know if it will increase anything. I don't know. It'd be great if we see an actual increase, but I think a lot of people using the Sirius XM app, it's going to take them a little bit of time to even figure out. I didn't even realize it. I didn't even know, and it's my podcast. I didn't even know. So to the listener who emailed me, if you will email me back and tell me how you found it, because I was looking at the categories. I think the categories right now for podcasts on there is like news, entertainment, I think politics. Like, how did you even find us? Did you just do a manual search? And what provoked you to do a search? Like, what provoked you on the Sirius XM app to do a search for Theology Central? Like, what was going on? I need to know. Inquiring minds need to know. But hopefully some other person who's never heard of the program will stumble upon it, and we will see. So that's a little bit of encouragement. That's good. But it makes me nervous as I started this podcast. Because the more platforms you are on, then the more you start feeling like, ooh, we gotta put this together a little better. We need a better intro. I need to do better. I need to be better, not using, how I pronounce things better, and how do I say this, and subject verb agreement, and being more grammatically accurate and not saying things incorrectly, and I got to do this, and I got to fix this, and I got to do this, and I got to fix that, and I got to do this, and maybe we need outro. And so then you'll start trying to edit and publish and polish. And I think at some point you lose what this was always supposed to be about. And this is always supposed to have been about a human being who's very much a sinner, who still hasn't figured out, life, sitting in front of a microphone saying, hey, I'm inviting people along going, hey, let's talk about what's going on in the world. Let's talk about it from a theological perspective. Let's talk about anything. Anything is open to discussion, anything. And sometimes it will be very theological. Sometimes we'll just relate it to theology, but we can talk about anything and everything. And it's not scheduled. It's not polished. It's not edited. It's not cleaned up. It's real. It's raw. It's just what it is. And so I have to maintain that, or it just becomes just like every other podcast. Now, being like every other podcast would possibly mean better success. But if you lose what it is for success, then is that really success? I would rather be successful. I mean, that's been my philosophy with church. I mean, look, from a human perspective, my philosophy about not following the template for church and being like, we're not going to just be a place that teaches theology, but we're going to do theology in real time. And the people are involved, and we study and we work through things. And we're not just going to follow the traditional sermon structure and throwing out all of the traditional way has not benefited me, right? My church is so very small, very small. Many people would say you should just give up and be done, because most people don't want that. But if I stopped doing it that way and followed the normal church way, polished it all up, cleaned it up, did the right kind of marketing, had some programs, had some, some of the typical things churches do, maybe then I could increase the number of people, which would be then, oh, you're successful. But if I'm successful at tearing apart it would not be honest. It would be success based on something that's inauthentic. I want it to be authentic. So I would rather stumble over my words, say things incorrectly, mess up subject-verb agreement and all the other things I mess up, say names incorrectly, say words incorrectly, no editing it out, leaving it there, and being that than being like everyone else. I mean, you've got everyone else, right? Just go listen to podcast or podcast. You know this. Almost all of them are two people. They always have two people. And the way they're structured is so radically different than the way I'm doing it. So my way may never catch on, but at least it's my way, right? So we will see. I'm just not going to worry about when people tune in, they may be like, that's an unprofessional. What is that? Ugh, that's trash. I understand that's real, but maybe if they will not judge a book immediately by its cover and keep listening, they'll find out, oh, there is something unique about that. There's something kind of different, not so following the template. Okay, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. He's an idiot, but at least it's kind of cool. I mean, he may be dumb, but at least he's trying something. If at least I can get that would be good. So we will see. But there's your update. Theology Central, this very podcast, is now available on the Sirius XM satellite radio app. Download it. If you haven't checked out Sirius XM, now you can do a streaming only plan for like $9.99 a month, just like all the other music streaming services. They're basically trying to become the Spotify. They're trying to become like Spotify. They're trying to become like Apple Music. And we're right there. So we'll see what we can do. And we'll continue to improve and see. So it's a positive sign. What it means for 2024. Well, we're going to be talking a lot about 2024. Remember, I already told you, I think the 2024 is going to be an absolute train wreck of a year. I think it's going to be insane. I think it's going to be crazy. I just don't even know the upheaval, pain, suffering. I feel like, and so what I'm going to try to do through 2024 is be right here in front of a microphone, and we've already talked about creating a possibly podcast series called basically 2024, an audio journal. I've also thought about creating an own separate podcast, doing that. But if I create a separate podcast and I'm trying to capture 2024 and a separate podcast, then clearly Theology Central will suffer. So can I merge the two ideas together and make it a part of Theology Central? Hey, Theology Central, here is our podcast series known as, 2024, an audio journal. Here's what's going on in 2024. I don't know. I don't know how it's all I've always got these ideas, but we will see. One thing, no matter if we call it an audio journal or not, inadvertently, every podcast that's not so rehearsed and polished, I think in a sense, just becomes a real journal of what's happening, at least in part, within a year. Maybe it's very limited in its view, but maybe we can just say, you know what, let's talk about anything. We'll see. newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. No one tell me about the Detroit Lions. I don't want to know. Shh. Do not tell me what's going on. I'm going to run downstairs. I'm going to try to grab my remote control and close my eyes and do rewind so that I can go back and see. Right? Because when I left, they were winning, and the next thing I looked up, and I'm like, how are they losing? What just happened? Right? So, right, it's like 30 years of history. Right? So, yeah, I know you don't care, but see, that's what I'm going to do. All right, but wait, before I can run downstairs, I have to edit this because we got that silence. So guess what? I think the audio is going to show up on Sirius XM with that messed up intro before I can go fix it. All right. So let me see if I can go fix it really quick. So then it won't be there. All right. I'm going to go do that. All right. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a great day. Great. Have a wonderful Christmas Eve. A Merry Christmas. And of course, we will be doing more broadcasting coming up. So I don't know when, don't know how, we'll see. Yeah. That's the thing. There's no schedule, right? Because we're about as unprofessional as we can be. Thanks for listening. God bless.